Hello, how are you?
The crystal chandelier above the Ashford dining table cost more than most people earn in a year. I knew because I'd overheard Mrs. Ashford bragging about it to her book club. What she didn't know was that I could have bought 10 of them without checking my bank balance. My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 27 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've been the nanny to 7-year-old Emma Ashford. To this family, I'm invisible. I'm the help. I'm the girl from nowhere who should be grateful they let me live in their guest house and eat their leftovers. They have no idea who I really am. The morning everything changed started like any other morning in the Ashford mansion. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. in the guest house, a converted garage that Mrs. Ashford liked to call charming, but was really just a polite way of saying, not good enough for the main house. I made coffee in the tiny kitchenette, got dressed in my usual uniform of jeans and a simple sweater, and walked across the perfectly manicured lawn to the main residence. The house was a monument to new money desperately trying to look like old money. Every surface gleamed. Every corner was staged for Instagram. The Ashfords had made their fortune in commercial real estate during the boom, and they never let anyone forget it. Richard Ashford, the patriarch, had built Ashford Properties from a single strip mall into a portfolio of over 40 commercial buildings across 3 states. His wife, Catherine, had transformed herself from a dental hygienist into a society maven through sheer force of will and an unlimited credit card. Their daughter Emma was sweet, smart, and lonely in the way only children of the wealthy can be. I let myself in through the kitchen door. Maria, the housekeeper, was already there, preparing breakfast. She gave me a tired smile. We were allies in invisibility, the 2 women who kept the Ashford household running while receiving none of the credit. Mrs. Ashford is in a mood today, Maria whispered in her accented English. She's been on the phone since 6. Something about the company. I nodded and headed upstairs to wake Emma. The little girl's room was bigger than most apartments, filled with toys she never played with and clothes she never wore. She was curled up in her princess bed, her dark hair spread across the pillow, looking nothing like the spoiled heiress her parents were grooming her to be. "Good morning, sunshine," I said softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. Emma's eyes fluttered open. "Claire, I had the best dream. We were at the beach, and there were dolphins, and you taught me how to swim with them." My heart squeezed. In 3 years, the Ashfords had taken Emma to the beach exactly once, and they'd spent the entire time on their phones conducting business. I'd taken her to the public beach 20 minutes away at least a dozen times, sneaking away on my days off. "Maybe we can go to the beach again soon," I said. "But first, we need to get you ready for school." As I helped Emma brush her teeth and choose her outfit, I heard raised voices from downstairs. Richard's deep baritone and Catherine's sharp soprano, both pitched in anger. This wasn't unusual. The Ashfords fought the way other people breathed, constantly and without much thought. But something about this morning's argument felt different. There was an edge of panic I hadn't heard before. Emma noticed too. "Are Mommy and Daddy fighting again?" "They're just talking," I lied, fastening the buttons on her school uniform. "Adults sometimes talk loudly when they're worried about work stuff." "Do you ever yell when you're worried?" "No, sweetheart. I've learned that being quiet is usually more powerful than being loud." Emma thought about this as I braided her hair. "You're the smartest person I know, Claire. Smarter than Mommy and Daddy even." If only she knew how right she was. We went downstairs for breakfast. The dining room was empty, which was normal. The Ashfords rarely ate with their daughter, usually grabbing coffee on their way out the door to some meeting or another. This morning was no exception. Catherine appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her designer armor, a Chanel suit that probably cost more than I was supposedly paid in a month. Her makeup was flawless, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the tightness around her eyes. "Emma, eat quickly. Your driver will be here in 20 minutes. She glanced at me without really seeing me. "Claire, I need you to keep Emma occupied after school. Richard and I have an emergency meeting that may run late." "Of course, Mrs. Ashford." She started to leave, then paused. "And Claire, please don't let Emma get dirty today. We have the charity gala tonight, and I don't have time to deal with wardrobe changes." "Yes, Mrs. Ashford." After she left, Emma looked up at me with her big brown eyes. "Why doesn't Mommy ever eat breakfast with me?" "She's very busy, honey." "Are you busy?" "Never too busy for you." Emma smiled and returned to her cereal. These small moments, these quiet exchanges, were why I'd stayed for 3 years despite the Ashfords' treatment. Emma needed someone who actually saw her, who valued her for more than her last name and her trust fund. After Emma left for school, I had 3 hours before pickup. The Ashfords expected me to spend this time doing light housekeeping in the main house, organizing Emma's toys, preparing her afternoon snack. What they didn't know was that I spent most of this time in my laptop, managing a portfolio that would make their real estate empire look like a lemonade stand. I walked back to the guest house and locked the door behind me. The space was small, but it was mine, and more importantly, it was private. I opened my laptop, entered a 16-character password, and logged into my investment account. Current balance: $847 million. I'd made my first million at 22, 3 years before I became Emma's nanny. I developed a data analytics algorithm that could predict commercial real estate trends with unprecedented accuracy. I'd licensed it to 3 major firms, each paying me millions annually. Then I'd used that algorithm myself, quietly buying and selling properties, always staying 10 steps ahead of the market. By the time I was 24, I was worth over $200 million. By 25, I'd crossed $500 million. Now, at 27, I was closing in on $1 billion. The reason I became a nanny wasn't desperation. It was research. 3 years ago, I'd been looking to expand into commercial real estate development, but I wanted to understand the business from the inside. I wanted to see how the major players operated, what mistakes they made, where the vulnerabilities were. The Ashfords were the perfect case study, successful enough to be interesting, but not so successful that they were untouchable. So I'd created a false identity, Claire Morgan, complete with fabricated references and a carefully constructed backstory. I'd applied to be Emma's nanny, knowing the Ashfords would never bother to dig too deep into the background of household staff. They'd hired me within a week. For 3 years, I'd lived in their guest house, watched their operations, studied their business decisions, and documented their mistakes. I'd also grown genuinely attached to Emma, which complicated things in ways I hadn't anticipated. The Ashfords treated me like furniture, speaking freely about business matters in front of me, leaving confidential documents on the kitchen counter, taking calls on speakerphone while I was in the room. They never imagined that the quiet nanny wiping down counters was actually analyzing their every move, identifying the structural weaknesses in their empire. And there were many weaknesses. Richard Ashford was brilliant at acquiring properties, but terrible at managing them. He overleveraged constantly, using the equity in one building to finance the next, creating a house of cards that looked impressive but was fundamentally unstable. Catherine was worse, spending money faster than the company could generate it, always chasing the next social status symbol. But I'd never intended to interfere. I was an observer, not a participant. I was going to finish my research, leave the nanny job with a generous gift for Emma, and launch my own development company with everything I'd learned. That was before I heard this morning's argument. I'd been in the kitchen making Emma's breakfast when Richard and Catherine started fighting in his study, just down the hall. The door was open a crack, and their voices carried clearly. "How much?" Catherine was saying, her voice tight with panic. $12 million. Due in 30 days. 30 days? Richard, where are we supposed to get $12 million in 30 days? I'm working on it. I have calls out to every investor, every bank. Someone will bite. What if they don't? Then we lose the flagship property. And if we lose that, the whole portfolio collapses. Everything is cross-collateralized, Catherine. You know that. There was a long silence. What about the pension fund? Catherine finally asked. Already tapped. There's nothing left. The emergency accounts. Gone. All of it went into the Denver acquisition. Another silence. Longer this time. So we're bankrupt, Catherine said flatly. Not if I can find a buyer or an investor. The properties are sound. The cash flow is strong. We just have an immediate liquidity problem. A $12 million liquidity problem that will destroy us in 30 days. I'd moved away from the door before they could catch me listening. But I'd heard enough. The Ashfords were drowning, and they had less than a month to find a life raft. Now, sitting in my guest house, I pulled up the Ashford Properties file I'd been maintaining for 3 years. I knew their portfolio better than they did. I knew which properties were profitable, which were break-even, and which were money pits. I knew their debt structure, their cash flow, their relationships with every bank and investor. And I knew exactly how to save them. The question was, should I? The Ashfords had never been cruel. Exactly. But they'd never been kind either. They treated me like a servant, looked through me like I was transparent, spoke about me in the third person while I was standing right there. Catherine had introduced me to her friends as the help, more times than I could count. Richard had never once asked my opinion on anything, never acknowledged that I might have a brain behind my quiet demeanor. The only Ashford who'd ever treated me like a human being was Emma, a 7-year-old child who didn't yet understand that some people were supposed to be invisible. Part of me wanted to let them fail, to watch their empire crumble, to see the look on Catherine's face when she realized that the charming guest house would soon be the only house they could afford. They'd built their fortune on arrogance and luck, and now their luck had run out. But then I thought about Emma. Sweet, lonely Emma, who drew me pictures and saved me the last cookie and told me I was the smartest person she knew. If the Ashfords lost everything, Emma would lose everything too. No more private school. No more stability. No more childhood home filled with toys she didn't play with, but that represented security nonetheless. I closed my laptop and stared out the window at the main house. The morning sun was hitting the east wing, making the windows glow like gold. Inside that house was a family teetering on the edge of disaster, completely unaware that their salvation was sleeping in the guest house. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Richard and I will be out until late tonight. Feed Emma dinner and put her to bed. We'll be home after she's asleep. No, please. No, thank you. Just orders. The way they always communicated with me. I texted back. Of course, Mrs. Ashford. Then I opened my laptop again and started making calls. If I was going to save the Ashfords, I was going to do it my way. And they were going to learn a very important lesson about the woman they'd been ignoring for 3 years. The afternoon pickup from Emma's school was routine. She bounced into the car with her usual energy, chattering about an art project and a friend's upcoming birthday party. I listened and nodded in all the right places, but my mind was elsewhere, calculating, planning. Claire? You're being quiet, Emma said, studying my face with the unsettling perceptiveness of children. Just thinking about what to make for dinner. How do you feel about mac and cheese? Yes. The way you make it, not the way Maria makes it. What's wrong with how Maria makes it? She uses the fancy cheese. Yours is better, because you use the orange powder cheese that comes in the box. I laughed despite my preoccupation. Your mother would have a heart attack if she knew I was feeding you Kraft mac and cheese. Don't tell her, Emma said conspiratorially. It can be our secret. Our secret. The Ashford family was built on secrets, though they didn't know it yet. Richard's overleveraging, Catherine's spending, the pension fund that had been borrowed to cover personal expenses, the tax strategies that were creative enough to be questionable. I knew all their secrets. I'd been documenting them for 3 years. Back at the house, I made Emma her contraband mac and cheese, while she did homework at the kitchen counter. Maria had already left for the day. The house felt cavernous and empty, the way it always did when it was just Emma and me. Where are your parents tonight? I asked, though I already knew. Emergency meeting. That's what Mommy said. Is everything okay, Claire? Daddy looked really worried this morning. Smart kid. Nothing got past her. Sometimes grown-ups have to deal with complicated work problems. But it'll be fine. How do you know? Because I'm going to make sure of it, I thought. Out loud, I said, because your dad is very good at solving problems. This was only partly true. Richard was good at creating problems. Solving them was another matter entirely. After dinner, we played board games, read stories, and I tucked Emma into bed at 8 o'clock sharp. She made me promise to check on her in an hour, the way I always did. Some of the other staff thought I was too indulgent with her, but I didn't care. Someone needed to make this child feel like she mattered. At 8:30, with Emma asleep and the house silent, I returned to my guest house and got to work. I'd spent the afternoon making phone calls from my car, using my real identity, my real voice, the one the Ashfords had never heard. I'd reached out to 3 private equity firms, 2 commercial real estate investors, and 1 family office that specialized in distressed assets. The pitch was simple. Ashford Properties was a fundamentally sound company, facing a temporary liquidity crisis. The flagship property was worth at least $30 million, but Richard needed to sell fast and would accept a lowball offer. The rest of the portfolio was solid, but cross-collateralized, meaning whoever bought the flagship property could potentially force a fire sale of the entire empire. It was a vulture's dream scenario. Buy low from a desperate seller, flip high once the crisis passed, make millions in months. I'd received 3 serious offers by the time I tucked Emma into bed. All of them were insultingly low. Exactly as I'd expected. Richard would have to choose between losing everything and selling his legacy for pennies on the dollar. Unless he had another option. At 9 o'clock, I made one more call. Whitmore Capital Group, this is Gerald Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, my name is Catherine Chen. I'm calling about a potential investment opportunity. Catherine Chen was one of my business identities, complete with an LLC, an investment track record, and a reputation for being ruthless but fair. The Ashfords had never heard the name because Catherine operated in circles they couldn't access. I'm listening, Whitmore said. He was old money. Boston Brahmin. The kind of investor who could write an 8-figure check without blinking. Ashford Properties is about to implode. Richard Ashford has a $12 million note due in 29 days, and he can't cover it. He's going to lose his flagship property, which will trigger a collapse of his entire portfolio. I've heard rumors about Ashford. Overextended himself. Not surprising. What if I told you there was a way to acquire the whole portfolio for 40 cents on the dollar? I'd say you have my attention. I spent the next 20 minutes laying out my plan. Whitmore would offer Richard a lifeline, $12 million in exchange for a 51% stake in Ashford Properties. Richard would retain operational control but would be accountable to a new board of directors. The twist: I would be on that board, representing a silent partner who wished to remain anonymous. From that position, I could guide the company away from Richard's reckless strategies, protect Emma's future, and eventually position the company for a sale that would make everyone wealthy. Why not just buy it yourself? Whitmore asked. Your file suggests you could write this check without difficulty. Because Richard Ashford would never accept money directly from a woman he doesn't know. His ego wouldn't allow it. But a respected family office offering rescue, that he'll take. And what's your angle? The company is worth saving. The family needs help, whether they know it or not. And I have personal reasons for wanting to ensure a certain 7-year-old girl has a stable future. There was a long pause. Then Whitmore said, Okay, Miss Chen, I'm in. Draft the term sheet and send it over. If the numbers work, we'll make the offer tomorrow. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair and let out a long breath. Phase 1 was complete. Now came the hard part, revealing myself to the Ashfords at exactly the right moment. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Running later than expected. Don't wait up. Check on Emma before you go to bed. Always orders. Never gratitude. I smiled to myself. Tomorrow was going to be very interesting. At 6 a.m. the next morning, I was awake and monitoring my email. The term sheet from Whitmore Capital had arrived at midnight. It was perfect. $12 million immediately, in exchange for 51% equity and board seats. Richard would retain his CEO title and operational control, but major decisions would require board approval. Whitmore had scheduled a meeting with Richard for 10 a.m. today. Richard didn't know it yet, but his salvation was 8 hours away. I made coffee and watched the sunrise through my small window. In a few hours, everything would change. The question was, how would the Ashfords react when they learned the truth? At 7:30, I crossed to the main house to wake Emma. The kitchen was already bustling. Maria was making breakfast, and surprisingly, both Richard and Catherine were at the table. This was unprecedented. The Ashfords never ate breakfast together. They looked terrible. Catherine's makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. Richard's suit was wrinkled, like he'd slept in it. They were hunched over coffee cups, speaking in low, urgent tones. They didn't notice me enter. Can't believe none of them called back, Catherine was saying. Not Morgenstern. Not the Caldwell Group. Not even that vulture Peterson. They smell blood, Richard said bitterly. They're waiting for us to be desperate enough to accept whatever terms they offer. We're already desperate. I know that, they know that. But I'm not giving away my life's work for nothing. Your life's work won't matter if we lose the house, Richard. If we lose everything. I cleared my throat softly. They both jumped, as if they'd forgotten that other people existed in their world. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said quietly. I just came to wake Emma. Fine, yes, do that, Catherine said dismissively, waving her hand without looking at me. I turned to leave, then paused. Mrs. Ashford? I couldn't help but overhear. Is everything all right? It was a risky question. The help wasn't supposed to ask personal questions or show concern beyond their defined duties. But I needed to plant a seed. Catherine finally looked at me. Really looked at me. For perhaps the first time in 3 years. Everything is fine, Claire. Just some business complications. Nothing for you to worry about. Of course. I just wanted to say. I paused, choosing my words carefully. I hope things work out. Emma. She's such a wonderful little girl. She deserves stability. Something flickered in Catherine's eyes. Guilt, maybe, or recognition that her daughter's nanny understood what was at stake. Thank you, Claire, she said, her voice softer than usual. That's very kind. I nodded and went upstairs to wake Emma, leaving the Ashfords to their crisis. The morning proceeded normally. Emma went to school. Richard disappeared into his study for a series of phone calls that I could hear through the walls, each one more desperate than the last. Catherine left for the gym, her usual escape when stress became overwhelming. At 9:45, a black Mercedes pulled up to the house. Gerald Whitmore emerged, dressed in a Savile Row suit that probably cost more than the car. He was old money personified. Gray hair, weathered patrician features, the kind of man who'd been attending board meetings since birth. I watched from the guest house window as Richard greeted him at the door. Even from a distance, I could see the hope and desperation in Richard's posture. The meeting was scheduled for 1 hour. I knew because I'd helped draft the agenda. Whitmore would present the term sheet, give Richard 30 minutes to review it, and request a decision by end of day. What Richard didn't know was that I had a backup plan. If he refused Whitmore's offer, 3 vulture funds were waiting to make offers on the flagship property, each one more predatory than the last. I'd orchestrated them as insurance, to make Whitmore's deal look generous by comparison. Sometimes you had to show someone the cliff before they'd accept the rope. At 10:45, exactly on schedule, Whitmore emerged from the house. He walked to his car, paused, and looked directly at the guest house. He couldn't see me through the window, but he nodded anyway. The signal was clear, it went as planned. I waited. At 11, Richard's study door slammed open. I heard him shouting for Catherine. His voice carried across the lawn, raw with emotion I couldn't quite identify. Relief? Anger? Both? At 11:15, my phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. Claire, can you come to the main house? We need to speak with you. My heart rate picked up. This wasn't the plan. Whitmore wasn't supposed to mention me at all. Had something gone wrong? I texted back, of course. Be right there. I took a moment to center myself. For 3 years, I'd been Claire the nanny. Quiet, unassuming, forgettable. That woman was about to disappear. I crossed the lawn and entered through the kitchen. Maria was there, looking worried. They want to see you in the study, she whispered. They seem very upset. It's okay, I told her. Everything's going to be fine. I walked down the hall to Richard's study and knocked on the open door. Both Ashfords were there, standing behind Richard's massive desk like they were preparing for battle. The term sheet from Whitmore Capital was spread across the desk, covered in Richard's angry notes. Claire, Richard said. His voice was strange, controlled but barely. Come in. Close the door. I did as instructed and stood before them, maintaining my usual posture. Hands folded, eyes down. The perfect servant. We just had a very interesting meeting, Catherine said, with a gentleman named Gerald Whitmore. He's offered to solve our financial problems. That's wonderful, I said carefully. Is it? Richard leaned forward. Because he mentioned something very strange. He said his investment partner, a silent partner who wishes to remain anonymous, specifically requested that someone named Catherine Chen be placed on our board of directors. My pulse was racing, but I kept my face neutral. I don't understand what this has to do with me. Neither did we, Catherine said, until I did some Googling while Richard was showing Mr. Whitmore out. Do you know what I found? I didn't answer. I found that Catherine Chen is a reclusive investor who's made a fortune in commercial real estate. I found that she's notoriously private, rarely photographed, and known for investing in struggling companies and turning them around. I also found a single photo from a charity event 3 years ago. Would you like to see it? Catherine turned her laptop around. On the screen was a photo of me at a gala in New York, wearing an evening gown, my hair styled professionally, looking nothing like the woman standing in front of them now, but undeniably the same person. The silence stretched out. I could hear the clock ticking on Richard's wall, the sound of Maria humming in the kitchen, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. Finally, I lifted my eyes and looked at them directly, not as a servant, but as an equal. My name is Catherine Chen, I said quietly. But you can keep calling me Claire if you prefer. I've gotten used to it. Richard's face went through a remarkable transformation. Confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally, dawning horror. You, he breathed. You've been here for 3 years, living in our guest house, taking care of our daughter, and you're worth approximately $847 million. I finished. Give or take a few million depending on the market. Catherine actually staggered backward and sat down hard in Richard's chair. I don't understand. Why would a billionaire work as a nanny? Almost billionaire, I corrected. And I had my reasons. Initially, I wanted to study the commercial real estate business from the inside. Your family provided an excellent case study. But then I met Emma. And my priorities changed. Emma, Catherine whispered. Oh my God, Emma. Your daughter is the reason I'm helping you. I said, my voice hardening slightly. Not because you deserve it. You don't. You've treated me like furniture for 3 years. You've looked through me, talked about me in the third person while I was standing right there, paid me a fraction of what I'm worth. We paid you $45,000 a year. Richard interrupted. I'm aware. I make that much in interest every 6 hours. But I accepted it because I was playing a role. A role you never questioned, because you never imagined that the quiet nanny might be the smartest person in the house. The words landed like bombs. Catherine flinched. Richard's face flushed red. But here's what you need to understand, I continued. Emma is a remarkable child. She's kind, intelligent, curious, and desperately lonely. She deserves better than parents who are too busy social climbing to notice her. She deserves stability, security, a childhood that isn't derailed by bankruptcy, because her father over-leveraged, and her mother spent money like water. How dare you, Richard started. I dare because I can. I cut him off. Because in about 30 minutes, 3 different vulture funds are going to call you with offers to buy your flagship property. Each offer will be lower than the last. Each one more humiliating. Whitmore's deal looks generous because I designed it that way. Take it, and you'll keep your company, your house, your lifestyle. Refuse it, and you'll lose everything within 30 days. Catherine was crying now, silent tears running down her carefully made-up face. Why are you doing this? If you hate us so much, why help us at all? I don't hate you, I said, and realized it was true. I pity you. You have everything and value nothing. You have a daughter who's desperate for your attention, and you're too busy chasing the next status symbol to notice. But Emma deserves better. So I'm saving your company not for you, but for her. The room fell silent again. Finally, Richard spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. The board seat. You're going to be on our board. Yes. Watching everything we do. Correcting everything you do wrong. You're brilliant at acquisition, Richard. But you're terrible at management. You over-leverage. You chase shiny objects. You let your ego make decisions that should be made by spreadsheets. That ends now. And if we refuse, Catherine asked. If we tell Whitmore to take his deal and shove it. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. Then at noon, you'll receive 3 offers, each worse than the last. By tomorrow, every creditor you have will know you're vulnerable. By next week, you'll be in bankruptcy. By next month, you'll be living in a condo and explaining to Emma why she has to change schools. I put my phone away. Or you can take Whitmore's deal, keep your company, and learn to run it properly. Your choice. Richard and Catherine looked at each other. Some unspoken communication passed between them, the kind that only comes from years of marriage. What happens to you? Richard finally asked. You said your role was research. Are you going to leave now that we know who you are? That depends on Emma. If she wants me to stay as her nanny, I'll stay. If she'd rather I leave, I'll leave. But either way, I'll be on your board, guiding your company, protecting her future. Emma loves you, Catherine said quietly. More than she loves us, probably. That's not true, I said, softening slightly. She loves you desperately. She just wishes you'd notice her more. Spend time with her. Show up to her school plays and art shows. Be present in her life. Catherine wiped her eyes. We've been terrible parents. You've been distracted parents. There's a difference. You can fix distracted. Richard walked around his desk and stood in front of me. For the first time in 3 years, he looked at me. Really looked at me. Seeing the person he'd been ignoring. You could have destroyed us, he said. You had all the information, all the leverage. Why didn't you? Because revenge is expensive and accomplishes nothing. This way, everyone wins. Whitmore gets a good investment. You keep your company. I ensure Emma's future. And maybe, just maybe, you two learn to be better parents. He extended his hand. I don't know whether to thank you or be terrified of you. I shook his hand firmly. Both would be appropriate. Catherine stood up and walked over to me. To my surprise, she hugged me. It was awkward and stiff, but genuine. Thank you, she whispered, for caring about our daughter when we weren't. Don't thank me yet, I said, pulling back. The board seat means I'm going to be very involved in your company's operations. You're going to hate some of my decisions. I'm going to force you to make hard choices. This isn't a gift. It's a partnership. Understood, Richard said. When do we sign? Whitmore will send over final documents this afternoon. You'll sign tomorrow. The money will transfer immediately. Your crisis will be over. And you'll stay? Catherine asked. As Emma's nanny. Until she doesn't need me anymore. Or until you fire me. Which you're welcome to do. Though I should mention that my board seat is contingent on my employment remaining intact for at least 1 year. Richard actually laughed. A shocked, slightly hysterical sound. You really did think of everything. I've had 3 years to plan. Did you think I was just folding laundry? At noon, exactly as I'd predicted, Richard's phone started ringing. The Vulture funds. Right on schedule. I watched him decline each call with growing confidence. He didn't need them anymore. He had a real solution. That evening, I picked Emma up from school as usual. She was her normal bubbly self, chattering about her day, completely unaware that her parents' world had nearly collapsed. Claire, guess what? We're learning about space in science class. Did you know that Jupiter has 67 moons? I did know that. Did you know that one of those moons, Europa, might have an ocean under its ice? Really? Can we look it up when we get home? Absolutely. When we arrived at the house, both Catherine and Richard were in the kitchen. Together. This had never happened on a school day before. Mommy. Daddy. Emma ran to them, surprised and delighted. You're both home. Catherine scooped her up, something else I'd never seen her do in 3 years. We wanted to have dinner with you tonight. All of us. Including Claire. If she'll join us. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Like a real family dinner? Yes, sweetheart. Like a real family dinner. Emma looked at me with pure joy. Claire, you have to sit next to me. I'd be honored. That night, the Ashford family sat down together for the first time in Emma's memory. Maria had prepared a beautiful meal, though I noticed with amusement that she'd also made a box of Kraft mac and cheese, just in case Miss Emma wants her favorite. Over dinner, Richard and Catherine asked Emma about school, about her friends, about her dreams. They listened to her answers. They were present in a way I'd never seen. And Emma bloomed under their attention, telling elaborate stories about her classmates, describing her latest art project, explaining her theory about why cats are better than dogs. I sat quietly, watching this family start to become whole. After Emma went to bed, the 3 of us sat in the living room. The elephant in the room hung heavy between us. So what happens now? Richard finally asked. Now you sign Whitmore's deal tomorrow. Then we restructure your debt, sell your 3 underperforming properties, and focus on making your core portfolio profitable. You stop chasing new acquisitions for at least 2 years. You build reserves. You run the company like a business, not an ego trip. That's the business side, Catherine said. What about this? She gestured vaguely at the house, at the life they'd built. This is up to you. You can keep living the way you've been living, or you can make different choices. Either way, I'll be here for Emma, and I'll be on your board, making sure you don't destroy what we're about to rebuild. Are you going to tell anyone? Richard asked. About who you really are. Eventually, yes. When the time is right. For now, I'm still just Emma's nanny. The board will know me as Catherine Chen, an Emma Kloss, investor based in New York. The 2 identities don't need to connect publicly. People will figure it out eventually, Catherine said. Let them. By then, the company will be stable. Emma will be older. And you 2 will hopefully have learned to be the parents she deserves. Richard stood and walked to the window overlooking the grounds. 3 years, he said quietly. You were here for 3 years. And we never saw you. People rarely see what they're not looking for. What should we have been looking for? A person. Not a servant. Not furniture. not the help. Just a person who deserved basic respect and common courtesy. He turned back to face me. We failed that test spectacularly. Yes, you did. But you have a chance to do better now. Don't waste it. 6 months later, Ashford Properties was thriving. We'd sold the underperforming assets, restructured the debt, and implemented management systems that actually worked. Richard had fought me on every decision for the first 3 months, then gradually came to trust my judgment. Catherine had reduced her spending by 70% and started volunteering at Emma's school. She'd also begun therapy, working through whatever drove her need for status and approval. But the biggest change was Emma. She had her parents now, really had them. They attended every school event. They ate dinner together 4 nights a week. They listened when she talked. They were learning to be the parents they should have been all along. As for me, I'd become something unexpected. Part of the family. Not the help, not the nanny, but a genuine member of their inner circle. Emma knew the truth now. Had known for months. Richard and Catherine had sat her down and explained that Claire was actually a very successful businesswoman who'd been helping them. Did you know the whole time? Emma had asked me, her big eyes serious. Know what, sweetie? That you were secretly rich and smart and amazing? I'd laughed. I've always been smart and amazing. The rich part is just money. What matters is who you are, not what you have. I think you're the smartest person in the whole world, Emma had said, hugging me tight. And I'm glad you picked us to help. Now, sitting in a board meeting at Ashford Properties headquarters, I watched Richard present the quarterly results. Strong growth, healthy reserves, sustainable practices. Everything a company should be. After the meeting, Richard pulled me aside. I owe you an apology, he said. A real one. Not for the business stuff, but for how we treated you those first 3 years. You saved us, and we didn't deserve it. You're right. You didn't deserve it. But Emma did. She talks about you constantly. You know that, right? Claire says this. Claire thinks that. You're her hero. She's my hero too. She saw me when no one else did. She's a lot smarter than her parents. He paused. We'd like to make this permanent. Not the nanny arrangement, but having you in our lives. Catherine and I, we've talked about it. You're family now. I felt unexpected emotion well up. Richard, let me finish. We want to set up a trust for Emma's future, with you as one of the trustees. We want you there for every milestone, every important moment. We want our daughter to grow up knowing the woman who taught us to see what really matters. I'd be honored. He smiled. Good. Because Emma already told us that if we didn't ask you, she'd disown us and come live with you instead. I laughed. She would too. She's got more backbone than both of you combined. She gets it from you. That evening, I sat in my guest house, now fully renovated and no longer a converted garage, looking through 3 years of notes. My research on the commercial real estate business, now obsolete because I'd learned everything I needed to know. My phone rang. Gerald Whitmore. Catherine. How's our investment performing? Better than projected. Ashford Properties will be profitable enough to consider an exit strategy within 2 years. Excellent. Though I have to say, this has been the strangest investment I've ever made. Most people don't go undercover as a nanny to save the company they're studying. Most people don't get emotionally attached to 7-year-old girls. True. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She taught me something important. What's that? That money and success don't mean anything if you have no one to share them with. The Ashfords had everything and valued nothing. I had everything and shared nothing. Emma helped us all learn to be better. After hanging up, I walked across to the main house. Emma had asked me to help her with a school project. Something about women in business. She wanted to interview me. Claire. She ran to meet me at the door. I have so many questions. First, how did you become so successful? Second, why did you pick our family? Third, can you teach me to be like you? I knelt down to her level. The answer to all 3 questions is the same. I learned to see what other people miss. I learned to be patient. And I learned that real success isn't about money. It's about making a difference in the lives of people you care about. So you picked us because you cared about us. I picked you because you saw me when no one else did. You taught your parents to see me too. You changed everything, Emma. She hugged me tight. I love you, Claire. Or should I call you Catherine now? Call me whatever feels right. Names don't matter. What matters is that we're family. Forever and ever. Forever and ever. As I helped Emma with her project that night, I thought about the journey that brought me here. I'd started as a billionaire playing a role, convinced I was the smartest person in the room. I'd ended as someone who understood that intelligence without empathy is useless, that success without connection is empty, and that sometimes the people who seem powerless are actually the most powerful of all. The Ashfords learned that lesson the hard way. They'd spent 3 years overlooking the woman who would save them, dismissing the intelligence that would guide them, ignoring the person who would teach them what family really means. They'd thought I was just the nanny. By the time they realized the truth, I'd already saved them. And in the process, they'd saved me too. Because Emma was right. Money and success don't mean anything if you have no one to share them with. I'd spent years building an empire, but it took a 7-year-old girl to teach me how to build a home.